I was with the chief executive of the Chartered Surveyors yesterday, who sees his people in some of this. Engineers, I'm sure many of you have had engineers involved in these areas. And they would say, well, that's because we add value, you don't. We have to set that position where we do add value and what it is, back to the value discussion earlier, which isn't easy because there's soft stuff in here, but there's some tangible stuff. And I think defining what we are, and the profession has gone from here to here. You know, I started out with buying widgets. You're now the entire supply chain, or seem to be, and I see a lot of, and this is terminology I'll come on to in a minute, a lot of supply directors, they're called so because they're the senior roles. They're not necessarily called procurement directors, reporting to the chief executive of a multinational. They'd be called a supply chain director because they want to see the whole length. So I think defining this value, defining this boundaries, I'll use the word boundaries, but it could be something else, of what we do and where we add value is fundamental going forward if we're going to have a profession that succeeds and grows. Because the downside of this huge visibility we're getting is it's given us a lack of hiding places that we used to have, as in cost reductions. I'll deliver you cost reductions, I'm safe. In this world, you're not safe because there's a lot of other things you're being held accountable for. So I think this is where we have a fundamental role to play, and we had a lot of discussions this morning on it, and I think it needs setting down. It needs setting down what we do and why we add value to it, and why a smart company should do this and not have other people doing it. And the guy from the Chartered Surveyors, fascinating discussion, because at the end of the discussion he said, you're right, what we need to do is start building something above this for the construction industry specifically, because they want senior managers and want to attract the best talent. I talked about talent earlier. How does the construction industry get the best talent? And then what they do get is they get very good quantity surveyors often, running businesses, but have no supply chain awareness. They might have a commercial person, a marketing person with no engineering awareness and surveying awareness, so on. So I think that's an interesting concept about taking the profession to the next level, but keeping our boundaries clear. And I think the danger is, again, I'm sure this will spark a discussion later on, is maintaining those boundaries with our users, our stakeholders, our customers. Because then you can build the skills. You need the skills you need to fulfill that. Right. This is probably the number one question I get sick of having, aside from the institutes of kindergarten. Is this one, is what do we call ourselves? You know, I get marketeers, I get finance guys saying, you guys, girl, why can't you make up your mind what you are? Because you keep changing it. And we're saying, well, no, we don't change it. It's an historical fact that we've had all these names. And many, many more. I've had some weird and wonderful conversations. In the US, as some of my American colleagues will be saying, acquisitions is the title in the defense industry. They talk about supply as the lowest of the low in the defense industry, in the UK as well. And on you go. Many titles, what do they mean? And this is one of the issues of where we are as a profession, is how on earth are we going to make ourselves well known if we don't have clarity over who we are and what's behind it. What I'm showing here is what I talked about earlier, our big idea, the Institute's big idea, is to license the profession. What do I mean by that? I mean to have a license to be allowed to practice this profession. If you go back 200 years, accountancy, statutory accountancy wasn't licensed, and you had companies' returns, certainly in the UK, which weren't quite what they said they would be. So they licensed accountants to assess those books. What I'm saying is we are seriously in the public goods space, and I'm running out of time. We are seriously in the public goods space for many, many reasons. It's been talked about today, from slavery that's going on in supply chains, through fraud, which is on the increase around the world, procurement fraud, etc., etc. What do I mean by this? Well, there's a long story behind it, but effectively it's saying if you have the right to be the owner of your company's spend and its relationships, then you should have a license of competency and behavior, particularly as well behavior, because the things we see going on in the world, and you might think, oh, it's nothing to do with me. I get a lot of press and media queries, why is it procurement and supply is allowing these things to happen? The Tesco debacle, the horse meat, the Bangladesh factory collapse, the slavery we're seeing around the world. It is seen as our problem.